Ivatt was suffering from the January blues. For reasons he couldn't explain, he felt sad and unsatisfied. Everyone else seemed to be much more cheerful as they went about their work. Ivatt was confused, so he confided with his driver. "I don't know what's wrong with me," he muttered. "Am I ill?" The driver thought about the situation as he went about oiling Ivatt. "I think after Christmas it's all become an anticlimax," diagnosed the driver. "The short days and gloomy weather doesn't help either. It's probably the January blues. People suffer from this sort of thing too." Ivatt sighed. "You don't think I'm what they call depressed?" "Bless you, no," laughed the driver, "but I must admit you could do with being cheered up." As the driver climbed into his cab, Fred steamed in with a small crane. He stopped next to the signal box. It was a surprise to see Fred at the station. He never usually went near it. Being a freight engine, he would usually be found in the yards collecting wagons. "What are you doing here?" asked Ivatt. "I'm bringing in this small crane to help replace some broken glass at the top of the station canopy," explained Fred. "Really, Den should be doing this." "Why?" "Well, because he's a diesel, he can roll under the canopy without shooting steam at the broken glass. I have to turn round and leave the train here for Jimmy." Ivatt watched the operation. Fred rolled over the point and stopped next to the train. Then Jimmy arrived to shunt the train under the canopy. He had to stop precisely before entering the station canopy. It didn't take long for Ivatt to suddenly feel low again, and he took a deep breath. Fred and Jimmy noticed something was wrong. Ivatt told them, but still didn't feel any better for telling his friends. "Last time you felt miserable, you were sent to the Somerset and Dorset region," remarked Jimmy. "Indeed, and that was a lovely surprise, and meeting Rob was even better. But this is different, and I can't explain why," Ivatt wondered. "My driver says I need cheering up." Fred smiled at the large tank engine. "Don't you worry, Ivatt," he chortled. "There's never a dull moment on this stretch of line. Something is bound to come along and brighten your day." Just then Fred was signalled to leave, and Jimmy shortly followed to collect some coaches. Ivatt still felt glum, but thought about what Fred had said as he departed with his train. Later that afternoon, Ivatt was back at the station ready to collect his passengers. The station soon became very busy, and the workmen found replacing the glass in the canopy a lot harder than they first thought. The decision was made to carry out the repairs in the evening when the station would be quieter. Den soon arrived to take the train away. As he coupled up to the wagons, Arthur steamed into the station to collect his train. He was preparing to leave with the Royal Scot when he noticed Ivatt's downcast expression. "Cheer up, old boy," smiled Arthur. "That's the problem, I can't," murmured Ivatt. At that moment the shed-master's daughter, Vicki, appeared on the platform. "Cor, you look a sight for sore eyes," exclaimed Vicki. "Me dad been horrible to you or summat?" "No, not at all. I'm just feeling blue." Vicki glanced an understandable look at Ivatt. "We all get like that sometimes," she announced. "I'm going off to cheer up my Nan. She's come out of hospital, so I'm going to look after her." "Oh, how kind of you," said Arthur grandly. "I know, me Nan's nice. I love her to bits. Whenever I visit her, she lets me watch Doctor Who on the television." Ivatt and Arthur looked at each other in a confused manner. "Doctor Who?" quizzed Ivatt. "Yeah, that's right," replied Vicki cheerfully. No, Doctor Who. Yeah, that's his name. What's his name? You just said it, Doctor Who." "Well, how can I? You haven't told me his name." "Yes, I have. You said doctor, and then asked me who he was." "No, I didn't." "Yes, you did." "No, I—" Vicki quickly cut short the conversation. "Anyway, he's a Time Lord that travels in a police telephone box that's called a TARDIS, and fights aliens and monsters," explained Vicki. "A Time Lord?" stuttered Arthur. "A police telephone box?" spluttered Ivatt. Arthur couldn't help but laugh at what Vicki had described to him. "Well, I can imagine what William would say. What a load of rubbish," he chuckled. "It's very popular," continued Vicki. "My favourite is when the Doctor battles against the Daleks." Again the engines looked in bewilderment at Vicki. Den, who had been eavesdropping on the engine's conversation, couldn't help but use this to his advantage for causing mischief. "They're aliens that look like boxes with bolts on. They slide around and have a thin nozzle that sticks out," said Vicki. "And they growl, 'Exterminate,' and shoot people." Den slithered up. "They sound perfect for getting rid of you steam engines," sniggered Den. Vicki pointed and laughed at the shunter. "You look just like one, you being a box with your big nose sticking out." Den felt insulted. He growled his engine and roared away. Vicki was still giggling when she boarded Arthur's train. Ivatt had perked up, but was still feeling sorry for himself. "Not to worry, my dear fellow. You'll be back to your normal self soon," puffed Arthur kindly. Ivatt hoped he was right. Arthur wished him well, the guard blew his whistle, and the Royal Scot departed. Ivatt was scheduled to take the evening stopping train from Euston. It was very dark, and no sooner had Jimmy left for the sheds than the station was eerily quiet. Ivatt began to think about what Fred and Arthur had said to him, but that was overcome with the curiosity of Vicky's description of a Dalek. He became quite distracted at the thought of an alien invading the railways. Presently Fred reversed into the platform with a van full of tools and equipment as the workmen began to congregate behind the engines whilst waiting for their crane. "Do you feel any better?" asked Fred politely. "No, not yet. Nothing has happened to kick me out of this mood," puffed Ivatt sadly. The signal changed, and in the distance the engines could hear a voice. "Exterminate! Exterminate! Exterminate!" "Can you hear that?" cried Fred. The shape of a thin box with something pointing out approached the station through the darkness. "It's a Dalek!" exclaimed Ivatt. "What's a Dalek?" And before Ivatt could explain, Den appeared out with a small crane in front of him. Ivatt suddenly burst into a fit of laughter. Den felt a little disheartened. It wasn't the reaction he was expecting. Fred couldn't help but laugh too, and even Den was heard to give a quiet chuckle. "Ho, ho, ho!" guffared Ivatt. "Oh, Den, you've made my day." "But I thought you'd be scared of a Dalek," oiled Den. Ivatt's smile grew bigger, and when it was time for him to leave, he was still laughing as he departed. "What was all that about?" asked Den in a perplexed state. Fred had no idea what Den had done, nor did he know what a Dalek was, but he was happy to see Ivatt smiling again. "Thank you, Den," grinned Fred. "I think you've cured Ivatt's January blues." Den stuttered an unsure, "You're welcome." And with that, Fred steamed cheerfully to the sheds.